Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into the mind-melting, sleep-obliterating, reality-questioning world of zombie drugs. Not the type from horror movies, no graveyards, no shuffling corpses, just actual modern-day substances so bizarre and catastrophic that, by the end, you'll wonder if bedtime is even safe anymore. We're talking bath salts that turn Tuesday into a nightmare, Xylazine that sounds like a kitchen cleaner, and a greatest hits album of What Happens If I Swallow This? That'll make medieval pottage sound downright nutritious. And since this is our brand new channel, before you settle in, maybe take a second to hit like and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy what you find here. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, turn on a fan for that gentle zombie apocalypse white noise. Get cozy, maybe check under the bed for any lurking raccoons or suspicious chemists. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered, why did people ever decide to smoke synthetic incense labeled not for human consumption? Why are so many of these chemicals invented by guys named Horace in the 1960s? Did anyone ever wake up and think, you know what would spice up my Tuesday? Bath salts and a garden gnome? Can a drug actually turn you into a zombie or just into someone who can't find their own pants? Is the real monster the substance, the government, or your old high school chemistry teacher? Are you safe if you only take Tylenol? Or does that count as the gateway drug to becoming a sleepwalking cannibal? And most importantly, will this be the night you finally understand the difference between crocodile and a regular, angry alligator? Congratulations. You've just woken up in the back alley of 21st century chemical history. Your wallet is missing. Your shoes are on the wrong feet. And someone's offering you a little packet of Cloud9 for a price that's both too high and suspiciously low. Good luck. Welcome to the early 2010, when news anchors everywhere learned the phrase bath salts, and humanity collectively lost its mind. Suddenly, every minor incident involved an unidentified white powder and a guy biting mailboxes. Was it a real crisis, or just another satanic panic for the internet age? Time to rub a little synthetic powder into the wound and find out. Let's set the scene. It's the golden age of smartphones, YouTube, and whatever Facebook was before your parents turned it into a coupon exchange. You wake up, check the news, and there it is. A headline so wild it makes you spill your coffee. Man high on bath salts eats neighbor's face. The anchors look terrified, the experts look confused, and your Aunt Carol is suddenly texting you in all caps, warning you not to answer the door if anyone seems twitchy. But before you lock your doors and barricade the windows, let's rewind. How did a product labeled not for human, consumption and found next to tire cleaner at the gas station suddenly become the stuff of urban legend? The answer is a potent mix of chemistry, media, and the eternal human desire to believe that the world is just one step away from total chaos. You see, the real story of bath salts isn't about actual baths, or even the kind of relaxing self-care you pretend to enjoy while scrolling through your ex's Instagram. No, these bath salts were designer drugs, synthetic cathinones, concocted in makeshift labs by folks who thought Breaking Bad was a business manual. They hit the market as legal highs, sold as plant food, cleaners, or, my personal favorite, research chemicals. Nothing says trustworthy like buying research chemicals from a guy named Snake at the Shell station. The real panic didn't start with scientists or even law enforcement. It started with the media, because nothing gets ratings like a good old-fashioned scare. Cue the graphics, blood red headlines, security camera, footage of someone doing interpretive dance in a parking lot, and stern warnings that this could happen in your neighborhood. Suddenly, bath salts were everywhere, on TV, in your group chats, and probably in the trending section right next to a video of a skateboarding dog. Now, let's talk about symptoms. According to newscasters, bath salts could give you superhuman strength, insatiable hunger, and the urge to strip naked and wrestle a mailbox. Real doctors, meanwhile, tried to explain that synthetic cathinones might cause agitation, hallucinations, and a deep, life-changing sense of regret. But who wants nuance when you can have zombies? The narrative was set. The zombie apocalypse had arrived, and it was apparently coming from aisle 3 at the local convenience store. Of course, reality was a bit more complicated. While bath salts could absolutely make you act bizarre, think sweating, paranoia, and the sudden belief that your mother-in-law is a government agent, most users didn't turn into face-eating monsters. Some just ended up in the ER trying to convince the staff that they were being chased by invisible raccoons. It was weird, it was tragic, and above all, it made great TV. What gets lost in all the hysteria is the fact that these moral panics aren't new. Remember the killer clowns of 2016? Or the razor blade Halloween candy panic your mom still brings up every October? Bath salts were just the next chapter in a long history of something in the shadows that wants to eat your face. The only difference now was that everyone had a camera, a Twitter account, and an urge to live stream their neighbor's meltdown. So, what did we learn from the dawn of the undead? That nothing spreads faster than fear, especially when it's dressed up as science and delivered by a well-moisturized news anchor. That some substances really are dangerous, but not always in the ways you expect. And most importantly, that the world may not be ending. But it's definitely stranger than you think. And if you're ever tempted by a packet labeled bath salts next to the beef jerky, remember, you could end up on the news, shirtless, chewing on a mailbox. Not exactly the 15 minutes of fame you want. It all started with something you could buy next to car air fresheners at the gas station. Bath salts. Not the lavender kind for your feet, the kind for your nightmares. You open the package, expecting relaxation, and suddenly you're running barefoot down Main Street, convinced the traffic cones are out to get you. Ah, modern chemistry, making Tuesday night memorable since 2011. Let's paint the picture. You stroll into your local gas station, maybe looking for a pack of gum or one of those hot dogs that's been spinning for a decade. But something in a brightly colored packet catches your eye. It says Ivory Wave, or Vanilla Sky, or White Lightning. Basically every name that sounds like an energy drink and a warning label mashed together. And on the back, in tiny letters, it reads, "Not for human consumption," which, as everyone knows, is code for definitely being consumed by someone before lunch. But what are bath salts, really? Despite the cozy name, these are synthetic cathinones, a chemical cousin to the natural stimulant found in the cat plant, which has been chewed for centuries in parts of Africa and the Middle East. The difference? No one in Yemen ever chewed a leaf and decided to karate chop a police car. Modern bath salts, cooked up in unlicensed labs and shipped in from overseas, are a cocktail of uncertainty, mephedrone, MDPV, methylone, and the always popular God knows what else. It's chemistry roulette, and the house always wins. The sales pitch is genius. Legal high, they shout from every corner of the internet. Safer than street drugs, they claim, ignoring the fact that the only safety testing involved is whether the package leaks in the mail. They're sold as plant food, jewelry cleaner, fish tank cleaner, all the things your local party crowd desperately needs. All it takes is a few creative minds, a loophole in the law, and suddenly every convenience store in America is a pop-up pharmacy for the deeply curious and the mildly reckless. You tear open the bag, maybe expecting a spa experience. What you get instead is the kind of ride that makes haunted houses seem like a gentle nap. Your heart races, your teeth grind. You feel a surge of confidence that can only be described as ill-advised. Some people get euphoria, others get anxiety so intense it makes tax season look fun. For the unlucky, there's a little bonus: intense hallucinations, paranoia, and a sudden urge to debate streetlights about the meaning of life. It's not so much a trip as it is a carnival ride designed by someone who hates you. But wait, there's more, because this isn't just about personal terror. Bath salts have a way of turning the user into the star of their own viral video. Neighbors call the police when they see you racing through their flower beds, convinced you're being chased by a very determined garden gnome. Emergency rooms become confessional booths for tales of imaginary pursuers, invisible bugs, and the deep, unshakable fear that your phone is plotting against you. The doctors try to help, but there's no antidote. Just IV fluids, calming words, and the hope that you'll come down before the security guard's shift ends. And if you were thinking, well, at least I'd never do something so ridiculous, remember? Bath salts snuck into the mainstream because they were legal, cheap, and everywhere. College kids, middle-aged accountants, curious grandmas, nobody was immune to the lure of the not-so-relaxing soak. It's the ultimate reminder that bad ideas don't discriminate. All it takes is a moment of curiosity and a complete disregard for warning labels. By the time lawmakers catch up, usually a few dozen news cycles and several viral incidents later, the chemists have already tweaked the formula, found a new loophole, and slapped a new label on the same old chemical nightmare. Bath salts, the world's most stressful spa day, brought to you by the tireless forces of supply, demand, and absolutely zero oversight. So next time you pass by those mysterious packets on the bottom shelf, give them a little nod and keep walking. Because if you want to run barefoot down Main Street, there are easier ways. All you really need is a lost bet, a sense of adventure, and absolutely no bath salts. Let's rewind to the infamous moment when the phrase face-eating zombie made the evening news. A man, a homeless stranger, a sunny Miami highway, and the world's most unfortunate snack break. What really happened? And did it have anything to do with bath salts, or just the Florida sun and some very poor life choices? The year is 2012. You're going about your business, maybe checking the headlines, maybe just trying to survive another Monday, when suddenly the news cycle detonates like a poorly maintained microwave. Man on bath, salts eats face, scream the headlines. Cable anchors blink in disbelief. Twitter loses its mind, and your grandma sends you a panicked voicemail telling you to avoid Florida at all costs. The zombie apocalypse, it seems, has finally arrived, and it's hungry. So, let's set the scene. It's a bright Miami afternoon, the kind of day when you expect sunburn, iguanas, and maybe a questionable margarita, not what's about to become the most infamous sidewalk encounter in modern history. On a highway exit ramp, a man named Rudy Eugene attacks a homeless man, Ronald Papo. What follows is the kind of headline that makes your coffee taste funny. Eugene strips naked, assaults Papo, and proceeds to chew off much of the man's face. The attack goes on for almost 20 minutes before police arrive. Warning shots are fired, and finally, Eugene is shot and killed. In the 80s aftermath, Papo somehow survives, forever changing the worst day of my life scale for everyone else. And in the days that follow, every reporter, neighbor, and distant cousin with a Facebook account becomes an amateur toxicologist. Bath salts, they all whisper, sometimes yell. The face-eating attack is immediately blamed on this mysterious new drug, a substance supposedly capable of turning mild-mannered Floridians into extra crispy extras from The Walking Dead. Bath salts had already been blamed for erratic behavior, wild hallucinations, and acts of bizarre violence, so it was the perfect fit for the narrative. Zombie drugs? Check. Sudden outbreak of cannibalism? Double check. But here's where things get messy. Well, messier. The toxicology reports, when they finally land, reveal no traces of bath salts, synthetic cathinones, or, honestly, anything beyond the world's worst luck. There's a bit of marijuana in Eugene's system, but otherwise, nothing that would explain the sudden craving for human Happy Meals. This, of course, does not stop the rumor mill. Once you put face-eating and bath salts together on cable news, there's no going back. The phrase sticks to the public imagination like wet duct tape. Let's pause for a second and ask, why did the zombie explanation catch on so fast? Simple. It's funnier, scarier, and more comforting than the alternatives. It's easier to believe in a mind-melting drug epidemic than to confront the much more uncomfortable reality that sometimes people break from reality for reasons we can't fully understand. Maybe it was undiagnosed mental illness, or extreme heat stroke, or just a uniquely catastrophic day. But nuance doesn't trend on Twitter. Zombies do. Of course, the Miami incident had real effects. Overnight, cities ramped up bans on bath salts. Police departments updated their what to do if someone tries to eat you training modules, and your cousin swore off all bath products forever. Bath salts, already infamous, became an instant shorthand for chaos, paranoia, and the modern fear that the rules of civilization could break at any moment, especially if you're in Florida. But if you step back, the whole saga is a perfect example of how a single, horrifying act can warp the way we see an entire issue. A tragic incident becomes a meme, then a panic, then a policy debate. The truth? Usually less supernatural, more sad, and infinitely more complicated. So, next time you see a wild headline, before you stockpile water, board up the windows, or swear off skincare forever, maybe take a breath and remember. Sometimes the real story is stranger, sadder, and a lot less coordinated than the zombie movies promised. And if you ever find yourself on a Miami highway, maybe just stick to the shade and steer clear of anyone with a suspiciously empty picnic basket. Bath salts weren't made by accident. They're designer drugs, whipped up in basements by people who probably failed ethics, class, but aced creative writing. The ingredients? Vaguely legal, extremely confusing, and definitely not recommended by your mom. Let's take a little stroll through the world of designer drugs. Imagine a place where innovation isn't about saving lives or curing diseases. It's about getting as weird as possible, as legally as possible, for as long as possible. It's less science fair and more a low-budget episode of Breaking Bad with extra student loans and questionable safety goggles. Welcome to the world of clandestine chemistry, where every new ban is just another challenge for someone in a lab coat with too much time and not enough supervision. Designer drugs are called designer because they're basically fashion with molecules. Picture a chemist in a dimly lit basement somewhere, hunched over a Bunsen burner and a pile of chemistry textbooks, muttering, "What if I just move this atom here?" And presto, it's no longer technically illegal. It's like playing legal hopscotch with the DEA, except the stakes are higher and the side effects include accidentally turning into a cautionary tale. These drugs are built on the skeletons of existing substances, amphetamines, cathinones, cannabinoids, only slightly tweaked to skirt the wording of whatever law just got passed. If the government bans one specific compound, the underground chemist tweaks a tiny part of the molecule, slaps a new label on it, maybe rocket fuel or Happy Cloud Ultra, and suddenly it's a whole new legal high. Never mind that it's one accidental sneeze away from melting your face off or convincing you that your goldfish is plotting against you. Let's talk sourcing. Back in the day, if you wanted to get high, you met a guy behind the bowling alley and bought something out of a sandwich bag. Now, you open a browser, wire money to somewhere you've never heard of, and hope a mysterious package doesn't turn up at the same time as a SWAT team. These chemical curiosities are manufactured all over the globe, shipped in bulk, and resold by convenience stores, or even your shadiest neighbor. And because the formulas change every month, even the people selling them often don't know what's actually inside. The side effects? Oh, only everything you can imagine, plus a few things you wish you couldn't. Heart palpitations, paranoia, seizures, and an overwhelming urge to tell strangers your secrets in the produce aisle. Some people get a boost of energy. Others get stuck in a 3-hour conversation with the toaster. And because nobody's testing these things for safety, you might get lucky and just feel weird for a day. Or you might end up as the star of the next viral "Don't do this" PSA. Of course, the legal cat and mouse game is half the story. Every time lawmakers manage to ban a batch of designer drugs, the clandestine chemists pivot faster than a politician near election day. The law says, no more MDPV, and within weeks, the market is flooded with brand new thing that isn't technically MDPV, but will ruin your night. Legislators scramble, public health officials sigh, and the cycle repeats. If you've ever tried to keep up with a toddler on a sugar high, you have a sense of what it's like to regulate designer drugs. It's tempting to blame chemistry for this mess, but it's really about loopholes and human creativity in all its misguided glory. Designer drugs exist because people will always want new thrills, and someone, somewhere, will always say, I bet I can make something just different enough to get away with it. The result is a chemical arms race, with users as the guinea pigs and the rest of us as slightly horrified spectators. So, the next time you see a suspiciously bright packet on a shelf labeled not for human consumption, remember, somewhere out there, a chemistry major is grinning, a legislator is groaning, and your mom is absolutely, definitely not recommending you try it. The designer drug saga continues, one molecule at a time. Step aside, Red Bull. Meet mephedrone, the plant food that became the star of British nightclubs. It's legal, it's cheap, and it's the only fertilizer known to make you dance until sunrise, or until your jaw falls off. Let's start with the sales pitch. Picture yourself in a crowded club in London, circa 2009. Neon lights, thumping bass, and a bathroom queue longer than the unemployment line. Everyone's buzzing, literally. You overhear someone whisper about meow meow or drone, not the latest cat video trend, but a powder scooped out of a suspicious little baggie, probably labeled not for human consumption. And there, in the midst of sweaty euphoria and questionable decisions, a new legend is born. On paper, mephedrone is just another synthetic cathinone, a chemical cousin to amphetamines, and a sibling to the infamous bath salts. But unlike those garage chemist nightmares, mephedrone's rise to fame was nothing short of meteoric. It shows up as a research chemical and, for a glorious period, is perfectly legal to sell in the UK. You can buy it online, at head shops, or from a friend of a friend who swears it's just fertilizer. Fertilizer for what? Nobody asks. If your plants start dancing, you've probably used too much. Here's the appeal. Mephedrone is cheap, hits fast, and gives you that classic club drug cocktail, energy, confidence, and the sudden conviction that you are both the best and worst dancer in the room. It feels a bit like MDMA, a bit like cocaine, and a lot like the chemical equivalent of a dare. Your heart races, your pupils dilate. You feel invincible, charismatic, and possibly capable of understanding modern art. Friends turn into best friends. Strangers turn into confessional partners. You haven't blinked in 30 minutes, but hey, neither has anyone else. But, as with all great parties, the bill arrives sooner than you think. The side effects aren't just mild headaches or a mild sense of regret. We're talking jaw clenching, teeth grinding, hallucinations, and for the lucky few, a bout of temporary paranoia that makes you question the motives of your own reflection. Your skin tingles. Your heart feels like it's trying to break out and go clubbing without you. And for some, the urge to redose is as persistent as the beat of a Bad House remix. Before long, you're not just partying. You're sprinting through a revolving door of highs, lows, and increasingly bizarre text messages. And then there's the dark side, hospital admissions for agitation, high blood pressure, and heart palpitations. Reports roll in of users experiencing psychosis, violent mood swings, and even nosebleeds from snorting too much plant food. Urban legends grow faster than the actual plants mephedrone was supposed to feed. One minute you're a club legend, the next you're starring in your own personal medical drama. Of course, the legal loophole closes eventually. By 2010, the UK government gets tired of reading headlines about dancing plants and bans mephedrone outright. In typical designer drug fashion, this just opens the door for the next round of chemistry experiments. But the glory days of meow meow are over. The remaining stashes are hidden, hoarded, or flushed in the world's most regretful spring cleaning. Yet, the mephedrone saga is a cautionary tale about what happens when you mix a desperate desire for a new high with the world's most creative chemists and a regulatory system that can't keep up. For a few wild years, British nightlife belonged to a substance that sounded like a joke, but acted like a dare. It was party powder, it was plant food, and for a brief, shining moment, it was the only reason anyone remembered what they did on a Friday night. So, the next time you see a bag of white powder labeled fertilizer, maybe give it to your ficus. And if you ever find yourself tempted to chase the next big legal high, just remember, sometimes the only thing growing is the list of side effects and your reputation as the person who turned the bathroom queue into a group therapy session. Imagine taking a hit of spice, a lab-made weed substitute, and suddenly deciding your couch is a time machine. Side effects may include paranoia, heart palpitations, and, if you're really unlucky, being featured on the local news for erratic behavior involving a mailbox. Let's be clear from the start. Spice, K2, or whatever new name it's going by this month, is not your older cousin's marijuana. It's not even in the same category as relaxing evening with a bag of chips. Synthetic cannabinoids are what happens when a chemist, possibly sleep-deprived and definitely unsupervised, looks at THC and says, what if we made it legal, stronger, and wildly unpredictable? Then they add a dash of marketing genius, slap on a shiny package, and sell it at every corner store with a sign that basically dares you to make a poor decision. Picture this. You're at a party, someone passes you a joint, but it's not the mellow, skunky aroma you remember from your college days. It smells faintly like a chemical spill and regret. But hey, it's herbal incense, it's legal, and you're feeling adventurous. You take a hit. Within minutes, your heart is racing, your vision is swimming, and you're pretty sure your living room just grew a second story. At first, you laugh. Then you realize you're not entirely sure how time works, or why your hands keep texting your ex without your permission. Why would anyone try this stuff? For starters, it's easy to get. During the 2010s, spice and its cousins were legal in most places, sold in head shops and gas stations next to incense and suspiciously generic energy drinks. The packages were colorful, sometimes featuring cartoon characters, sometimes promising calm, meditation, or Arctic blast. Never mind the fact that the ingredient list reads like a chemistry final you didn't study. For JWH 018, AM2201, and something we found behind the school. Unlike natural cannabis, where at least you sort of know what you're getting, spice is a chemical wild card. The synthetic compounds sprayed onto dried plant matter are often many times stronger than THC, and the dosing is less carefully measured and more, let's see what happens if we dump the whole bucket in. The result? One person might feel mild relaxation, while another is convinced they've become an actual toaster. There's no quality control, just a roulette wheel of possible outcomes. And then there are the medical consequences. Emergency rooms across the world started filling up with spice users experiencing everything from severe anxiety and hallucinations to seizures and even kidney failure. Doctors, already stretched thin by people eating Tide Pods and trying to vape maple syrup, suddenly had to manage teenagers who believed they were being chased by the alphabet. Not a good night for anyone involved. The legal landscape is its own comedy of errors. Every time regulators ban a compound, chemists tweak a molecule, rename the blend, and start over. The law scrambles, parents panic, and local news stations send their most dramatic reporter to film live from outside a 7-Eleven. Meanwhile, actual cannabis, regulated, tested, and mostly boring by comparison, sits quietly in the background, wondering how it got upstaged by its own evil twin. Of course, there are always stories. The guy who thought he could teleport if he just ran fast enough. The girl who ended up serenading the local postbox because it seemed sad. The group of friends who decided their cat was sending them secret messages. If you're lucky, your adventure with spice ends with an awkward apology to your neighbor, and maybe a stern talking to from the local authorities. If you're unlucky, it's a hospital bracelet, and a new entry in your family's "Do Not Talk About This" file. So, next time, someone offers you something herbal, legal, and totally safe. Remember, the only thing guaranteed is a story you might not want to tell. The spice is not nice. Your couch is not a time machine. And trust me, the mailbox doesn't want to hear your problems. Stick to tea, call your mom, and maybe just let the cat handle the mysteries of the universe. Welcome to Florida's second favorite export, flakka. It's cheaper than therapy, works faster than coffee, and has been known to convince users that they're invincible. Spoiler, they're not. Let's paint the scene. It's mid-2010s Florida. The humidity is somewhere between tropical rainforest and boiled sock, and local news is about to be gifted a new headline for the ages. Enter flakka, street name for alpha PVP, but you can just call it the end of your dignity in a little crystal. For the low price of $5, you too can lose touch with reality, sprint through traffic, or if you're lucky, just wake up hugging a wake up shrub, and wondering why your pants are gone. You probably first heard about flakka from a viral video. Some poor soul is running naked down the street, convinced they're being chased by invisible demons, or worse, that they're starring in their own superhero origin story. Flakka earned the nickname $5 Insanity because for less than the price of a bad sandwich, it promised a full-scale neurological malfunction. You'd think that would be a deterrent, but there's something about the allure of cheap and legal, for now, that draws people in like moths to a Walmart bug zapper. What does it do, exactly? In short, everything you don't want. Flakka is a synthetic cathinone, a cousin to bath salts and a direct descendant of the "I bet we can make this worse" school of chemistry. It cranks up your dopamine and norepinephrine, essentially flooring the gas pedal on your nervous system until your brain decides to check out and let your body handle things for a while. Users report feeling euphoric, invincible, and, most famously, utterly detached from reality. Police in Florida have reported flakka-fueled incidents ranging from people climbing buildings like Spider-Man to trying to break into police stations for protection from imaginary pursuers, to the classic "I am God" declaration, followed immediately by a wrestling match with a stop sign. Let's talk side effects. Rapid heart rate, paranoia, delusions, extreme aggression, superhuman, but not really, strength, and the ability to headline the evening news without even trying. Emergency rooms see everything from heart attacks and strokes to bizarre injuries that sound made up, like trying to fight your own reflection or eating gravel because it looked like cereal. Recovery, for those who get there, is slow and sometimes accompanied by lingering psychosis and a strong sense of regret. And because this is Florida, the whole thing is spiced up by the fact that flakka can be smoked, snorted, injected, or even vaped, making it the Swiss Army knife of poor decisions. Dealers mix it with anything and everything, so even seasoned users have no idea what's actually in the bag. One day it's mostly alpha PVP. The next, it's a mystery blend that belongs in a laboratory, not your bloodstream. Quality control? Not even a rumor. The response from authorities and the public is a blend of panic and dark humor. Law enforcement crackdowns lead to new chemical variants popping up faster than you can say public health crisis. News anchors stifle giggles as they describe the latest flakka escapade, usually involving nudity, public property, and someone yelling at a mailbox. Meanwhile, health officials issue grave warnings that sound like Mad Libs gone wrong. Please do not wrestle alligators, climb flagpoles, or declare yourself invincible while on flakka. Of course, like all chemical crazes, flakka eventually gets banned, but not before leaving a legacy of wild stories and a few YouTube compilations that will live forever in internet lore. Its reign was short, chaotic, and a reminder that just because you can buy something at a gas station doesn't mean you should. So, if you're ever offered a $5 insanity workout, maybe just take a walk, drink some coffee, and leave the superhero antics to the professionals. Because with flakka, the only thing you'll really be lifting is your reputation, right out of polite society and into Florida legend. Why settle for a regular high when you can add a dash of horse tranquilizer to your heroin? Xylazine, known as tranq, is what happens when you combine medical innovation with zero impulse control. The result? Necrotic wounds, zombie walk, and a city wondering what happened to all the bandages. Let's start with a little chemistry lesson no one asked for. Xylazine is a non-opioid sedative used in veterinary medicine, mainly for tranquilizing horses, cattle, or, on a particularly rough day, an alpaca with boundary issues. It was never intended for human consumption unless you happen to measure your body weight in hooves and enjoy the taste of hay. And yet, thanks to the tireless spirit of experimentation in America's underground drug scene, Xylazine found its way from the stable to the streets. How, you ask? Imagine you're a street-level pharmacist looking for an edge. Heroin's been cut, fentanyl's the new kid in town, and everyone's after that elusive better high. Enter Xylazine, available online or straight from the livestock supplier, ready to turn a regular bag of dope into a medical mystery. It stretches the supply, intensifies the sedation, and lowers the cost per dose. In theory, it's a win-win. In practice, it's a ticket to the worst sideshow on earth. Let's talk symptoms. With Xylazine in the mix, users don't just nod off. They enter a full-body shutdown that would make a hibernating bear jealous. Passers-by in Philadelphia's Kensington neighborhood have reported seeing people slumped over at impossible angles, frozen mid-step, or shuffling in slow motion like extras from a zombie audition. If you've ever wondered what the undead would look like in gym shorts and flip-flops, this is your answer. And then there's the skin. Xylazine is a vasoconstrictor, meaning it pinches blood vessels shut, and your skin is the first to pay the price. Users develop mysterious wounds, dark, rotting ulcers that won't heal, often appearing far from any injection site. Medical staff dub them tranq sores. You can recognize them by their distinctive combination of horror movie aesthetics and total refusal to close up, no matter how many ointments or prayers are applied. Bandages become the city's hottest commodity, and doctors get used to fielding questions that start with, "So, is this supposed to look like that?" Of course, since Xylazine isn't an opioid, it doesn't respond to naloxone, the miracle overdose reversal spray that's saved countless lives. Someone can stop breathing, and no amount of Narcan will do the trick if Xylazine is the culprit. First responders scramble, addiction counselors sigh, and the cycle spins faster. New drugs, new dangers, and new ways to worry your relatives. So, why would anyone take this stuff? For many, it's not a choice. Street drugs are rarely labeled, and asking your dealer about the active ingredients is a great way to be laughed out of the transaction. If you're using heroin or fentanyl in Philadelphia, there's a good chance you're also getting Xylazine, whether you wanted it or not. The city, once famous for cheesesteaks and Liberty Bells, is now ground zero for the American zombie walk, with emergency rooms struggling to keep up and harm reduction groups passing out supplies as fast as they can. The response from officials is a blend of exasperation, triage, and wishful thinking. There's a scramble to limit Xylazine's availability, update medical protocols, and warn the public not to buy their medicine from Tractor Supply. But the chemistry arms race marches on. As soon as one loophole closes, another opens, and the human guinea pig trials continue, one wound at a time. So, if you ever find yourself tempted by a high that comes with a side order of equine anesthesia, maybe pause and consider, was this substance designed for anything with a mane? Is your pharmacist wearing overalls? And most importantly, do you have enough bandages to star in your own zombie movie? If not, maybe just stick to aspirin and an early bedtime. The city of Philadelphia and your skin will thank you. In Russia, if you can't afford heroin, you just make your own. Introducing Crocodile, a home-brewed concoction that'll save you money on drugs and on skincare, because your skin won't be sticking around much longer. Let's set the scene. You're in the early 2000s, somewhere in Russia, where winter lasts 9 months. The sunlight is suspicious, and the economy is, let's call it, emotionally unavailable People are struggling, addiction is everywhere, and heroin, while available, gets expensive. And when something becomes expensive, humans do what humans always do. They invent an alternative that is somehow worse in every possible way. Crocodile is the street name for desomorphine, an opioid originally developed in the 1930s as a painkiller. In controlled medical settings, it was stronger than morphine and acted fast. Great. Love that. But like many things invented in the 1930s, it probably should have stayed in a lab and not become a hobby for people in freezing apartments with questionable plumbing. Because what happens is this. You, the desperate user, aren't making pharmaceutical-grade desomorphine. You're making the DIY version. And by DIY, I mean you're basically running a haunted chemistry experiment using ingredients that sound like the start of an insurance claim. To make crocodile, people used codeine tablets, sometimes over the counter at the time, mixed with things like gasoline, paint thinner, iodine, red phosphorus scraped from matchboxes, and other substances you usually associate with arson. And then they cooked it down into an injectable sludge that looked like something you'd scoop out of a rusty engine. If you've ever baked banana bread and thought, this might not be safe, imagine that feeling, but with gasoline, and you're injecting it into your veins. Now, why the name crocodile? Because of what it does to the body. Users developed scaly, greenish, blackened skin that resembled crocodile hide. Except, attached to a living human who is still trying to walk to the corner store. And the horror doesn't stop at appearance. Crocodile destroys tissue. It causes necrosis, literal rotting flesh, because the impurities and toxins in the homemade mixture don't just get you high, they burn you from the inside out. Skin ulcers form, veins collapse, tissue dies. Sometimes the damage is so severe that bone becomes visible. Yes, visible bone. Imagine waking up and discovering your arm looks like a Halloween decoration from a store that got shut down for health violations. And what makes it even more tragic is that the high doesn't even last very long. Compared to heroin, crocodile has a shorter effect, meaning you need more frequent doses, which means you're injecting this toxic soup again and again, multiple times a day, basically speed running your body's collapse like it's a video game achievement. If heroin addiction is a slow burning fire, crocodile is throwing gasoline directly onto your own organs and calling it affordable. And here's the most chilling part. People knew what it did. There were photos, there were reports, the stories spread. But addiction doesn't sit down for a thoughtful discussion. It doesn't say, let's evaluate long-term consequences. Addiction says, right now, relief, anything. So you do it. You cook the sludge, you filter it through whatever you have, cotton, old cloth, maybe the spiritual hope of your ancestors, and you inject it. The relief hits fast. The pain melts away. For a moment, the world is quiet. And then the bill arrives. First it's the swelling, then infection, then the smell, a smell that isn't metaphorical. A smell that isn't, wow, somebody forgot the trash. A smell that's your body trying to tell you something is deeply wrong. Doctors and hospitals in affected regions reported horrific injuries, but medical care wasn't always available. And many users avoided hospitals out of fear, shame, or because the hospitals had basically run out of ways to say, please stop injecting gasoline. Eventually, as awareness grew and codeine became harder to get, crocodile became less common. It didn't exactly disappear, but it stopped dominating headlines like it once did. The world moved on, like it always does, but crocodile remains one of the clearest examples of what happens when human Desperation meets chemistry and poverty and a system that leaves people with no good choices. And it's hard to imagine a better symbol for zombie drugs. Because crocodile doesn't just make you look undead, it eats you alive. And somehow, horrifyingly, people still reached for it anyway. Because history isn't just the story of kings and wars. Sometimes it's the story of a human being in the cold, holding a matchbox, scraping phosphorus into a spoon, and thinking, this is my best option. You can't make that up. Some drugs send you to the ER, but salvia sends you straight to the twilight zone. Legal in most places and available in your cousin's glove box, it's the substance that makes even reality TV look sensible. Let's start with the basics. Salvia divinorum is not a recent chemical concoction. It's a leafy plant native to the misty mountains of Oaxaca, Mexico. For centuries, Mazatec shamans used it in rituals to open the doors of perception. Apparently, these doors swing wide open and then immediately vanish, leaving you stumbling through a living Salvador Dali painting with no idea how you got there, or whether gravity is still a thing. The wild part? For most of the 2000s and 2010s, salvia was totally legal in much of the world, including the United States. No medical card, no secret handshake, just a trip to your local head shop or a click on the internet. And what did you get? A little packet of dried leaves, or, if you really wanted to see behind the curtain, a vial of salvia extract. It usually came with a warning label that said something vague like, not for human consumption, which, as we know, translates to challenge accepted. So what happens if you decide to go where only shamans, and now bored teenagers, have gone before? You sit down, take a hit, and suddenly your body feels like it's been packed into a tube of toothpaste. Your sense of time melts like butter in a microwave. You look down and realize your hands are turning into spaghetti, or possibly centipedes. For about 5 minutes, reality unravels completely. Some people find themselves reliving childhood memories, talking to inanimate objects, or convinced they've turned into a two-dimensional cartoon and been folded into a newspaper. If this sounds fun, let me clarify. Most people do not describe salvia as fun. It's more like watching your own existence get put through a blender set to existential crisis. The trip comes on so fast that you don't have time to second-guess your life choices. You're just suddenly somewhere else, often having deep conversations with the wallpaper or apologizing to a lamp for stepping on its feelings. 5 minutes later, you snap back to reality, drooling on the couch and hoping your friends weren't filming the whole ordeal for TikTok. Why, you may ask? Would anyone willingly do this? The answer lies somewhere between curiosity, peer pressure, and it was legal, so why not? In the age before, YouTube's community guidelines got serious. Entire genres of viral videos featured teenagers taking a hit of salvia and immediately launching themselves out of a lawn chair, shrieking in cosmic confusion. For a while, salvia was the drug of choice for people who thought mushrooms were too gentle, and LSD was too much of a time commitment. Of course, just because something is legal doesn't mean it's safe. Emergency rooms saw a wave of salvia-related visits, usually for panic attacks, injuries from running into furniture, or the simple aftermath of deciding to ride a bicycle mid-trip. For the vast majority, the effects were short-lived but intense. There was no risk of overdose in the traditional sense, but there was a non-zero chance of convincing yourself that your living room is a spaceship and your cat is the pilot. Eventually, lawmakers caught on. Many states and countries rushed to ban or regulate salvia, citing its powerful effects and tendency to turn otherwise normal people into existential astronauts for the length of a pop song. Head shops started stocking it under the counter, and YouTube replaced salvia challenge videos with slightly less surreal content, like people eating ungodly amounts of cinnamon. So, if you find yourself face to face with a packet of dried leaves that promises to expand your mind, maybe pause and think. There are easier ways to visit the twilight zone, like watching cable news at 3 a.m. or reading the comments section on any viral post. With salvia, the trip is short, the ride is wild, and reality TV suddenly seems like the sensible choice. Buying drugs used to mean meeting a guy behind a dumpster. Now it just means opening your laptop and hoping your package doesn't come with an FBI agent. Welcome to the Silk Road, where your worst decisions are just a click away. Let's start with a little nostalgia. Picture the old school method. You text a mysterious number, wait in the world's sketchiest parking lot, and hope nobody from your high school church group recognizes you. There's small talk, cash is exchanged, and you leave wondering if you just bought oregano. The thrill, the anxiety, the subtle smell of mildew, it's practically a rite of passage. But in the golden age of the internet, things got an upgrade. Enter the shadow market, a digital underground bazaar where buying drugs is about as easy as ordering socks. The Silk Road, launched in 2011, was the Amazon Prime of poor life choices. Just fire up a Tor browser, type in a secret URL, and voila, you're staring at thousands of listings for everything from MDMA to fake IDs to, presumably, cursed monkey paws. It's eBay, if eBay was run by supervillains and delivery came with a non-zero chance of a SWAT team. The Silk Road and its spiritual descendants offered something new: safety, anonymity, and user reviews. Yes, user reviews. You could actually compare dealers based on quality, speed, and, crucially, did not try to blackmail me. Transactions were made with Bitcoin, back when it was mostly used to buy stuff you didn't want your mom to know about, rather than as an investment vehicle for tech bros. There's a weird kind of modern convenience here. No more guessing what's in the baggie, no more awkward social interaction. Instead, you get detailed product descriptions, shipping estimates, and ratings. 5 stars. Arrived quickly, potent, packaging was discreet. Would buy again if I hadn't lost the use of my left eyebrow. Every now and then, you might stumble across a complaint. Shipping took 2 weeks, and I think my mushrooms were haunted. At least, everyone's a critic. But let's not get too romantic about the world's least trustworthy shopping mall. The risks are legion. For one, there's always the possibility that your package comes with a free set of handcuffs and a guest spot on the 6 o'clock news. Law enforcement agencies quickly got wise to the game and started running their own sting operations. A knock at the door from the mail carrier might just as easily be a knock from the DEA. Surprise! And of course, not everything sold in the shadow market is exactly what it claims to be. Sure, that bag might be labeled genuine Colombian marching powder, but there's an excellent chance it's baking soda, drywall dust, or a little slice of chemical chaos designed to make your next ER visit more memorable. The anonymity works both ways. The only thing sketchier than buying drugs from a stranger in a parking lot, buying drugs from a stranger with a screen name like XX420 Blaze, IT, Checks, Sex. Let's not forget the scammers, hackers, and digital pickpockets. Shadow markets are crawling with more tricksters than a Renaissance fair. Maybe your drugs never arrive. Maybe your Bitcoin vanishes. Maybe your computer gets a bonus virus that tells your boss you've been shopping for herbal incense at 3 in the morning. That's the magic of the digital age. Infinite. convenience, infinite regret. And as quickly as a site like the Silk Road springs up, it vanishes. One day you're browsing deals on party powder. The next, the FBI has replaced your homepage with a very official-looking eagle. Of course, for every takedown, 3 more markets pop up, each promising total security, no cops, and customer service that doesn't judge you. The arms race between users and law enforcement never ends. Meanwhile, teenagers with more curiosity than sense are discovering that a VPN is not the same as actual immunity. So, if you ever feel nostalgic for the old days of suspicious transactions in a parking lot, just remember, the future is now. It's encrypted, and it's just as likely to end with a knock at the door. The shadow market is a lot like the regular market, except your order confirmation comes with a side of existential dread. And, as always, user reviews are no substitute for common sense. Remember when zombie apocalypse meant a fun weekend at Comic-Con? Now it means CNN anchors solemnly warning you not to eat your neighbor, while the actual experts are just trying to explain basic pharmacology. Let's set the scene. You're sitting on your couch, hoping the news will finally deliver a segment on hedgehog rescue or the latest weather update. Instead, you're greeted by a breaking news alert, complete with spinning graphics, dramatic sound effects, and a serious-faced anchor who clearly hasn't slept since the last election. The Chiron reads, "Zombie drug panic." Could your next-door neighbor be next? You clutch your cup of tea, silently vowing never to open the door for anyone who looks even remotely peckish. This is the era of media mayhem. The 24-hour news cycle doesn't just want to keep you informed. It wants to keep you awake, slightly paranoid, and preferably texting everyone you know to warn them about the newest threat. Bath salts, flakka, spice, crocodile, they all become front-page material, not because 100 people are affected, but because one person did something headline-worthy and everyone loves a good, old-fashioned panic. The formula is simple. Find the weirdest, most outrageous incident, like a man who tried to wrestle a mailbox while hallucinating that he was the mayor of Mars, and use it to represent an entire class of drugs. Add a few stock photos of shifty-eyed teens, some B-roll of flashing police lights, and you've got yourself a national emergency. For extra points, throw in words like outbreak, epidemic, or wave. And don't forget the expert interview, usually with a doctor who spent the last 3 days explaining that, no, your aunt's neighbor's cousin isn't about to turn into a flesh-eating ghoul. But accuracy isn't what keeps the ratings high. What does? Fear, confusion, and a good zombie metaphor. Anchors solemnly cite sources claiming superhuman strength, mindless violence, and apocalyptic cravings for human flesh, all thanks to chemicals you can buy next to the beef jerky at the gas station. In the background, actual toxicologists are quietly tearing their hair out, waving studies, and begging someone to read the fine print. Meanwhile, the viewers are left with more questions than answers, and the sense that the only thing standing between civilization and chaos is a sturdy deadbolt. Of course, social media jumps in to amplify the madness. Viral tweets, share if you care Facebook posts, and grainy cell phone videos flood the internet, often outpacing the facts by several laps. A rumor that someone ate an entire police cruiser while on bath salts becomes gospel before lunch. Urban legends breed like rabbits, and the public's trust in reality takes another hit. What's lost in the chaos? Perspective. For every headline about a zombie attack, there are thousands of people struggling with addiction, mental health, or just a rough patch in life who don't make the news. The genuine science, the real risks, the numbers, the nuances are drowned out by a tidal wave of clickbait. Suddenly, even the experts start doubting their own sanity. Was it really bath salts, or just an incredibly bad day in Miami? Did flakka make that guy climb the billboard, or did he just have a lifelong dream of being a human flag? But here's the thing. The more the media hypes up the zombie angle, the less anyone actually learns. The conversation shifts from how do we help people in trouble to how do we keep the monsters out? And just like that, real solutions get replaced by wild speculation, panic, and maybe a few extra cans of beans stashed in the closet, just in case. So next time you see a news story warning about zombie drugs, take a breath. Maybe even turn off the TV for a while. The real world is rarely as scary or as silly as the headlines suggest. And if you're truly worried about your neighbors, just bake them some cookies. Zombies, after all, are notoriously bad at returning Tupperware. Every time the government bans one chemical, some guy in a lab coat invents 5 more. Is this science, or just a really inefficient game of whack-a-mole? Either way, someone's always losing. Picture it. The government announces a new ban. Lawmakers hold press conferences, shake hands, and issue stern warnings. No more bath salts, they declare. Synthetic cannabinoids are off the shelves. Mephedrone, never heard of her. For about 3 minutes, everyone feels safer. But somewhere, in a windowless room lit by the flicker of a single fluorescent bulb, a chemist is already hunched over a whiteboard, scribbling equations and cackling like a B-movie villain. You ban alpha PVP? I give you beta PVP, gamma PVP, and why not, super duper ultra PVP. It's less of a battle and more of a relay race with no finish line. Governments are constantly racing to keep up with substances that are invented faster than you can refresh your browser. By the time a new designer drug hits the evening news, there are already a half-dozen chemically similar compounds lined up and ready to fill the void. Each one tweaked just enough to evade the latest law. Add a methyl group here, subtract a chlorine there, slap a new name on the baggie, and voila, back in business. And while this might sound like a science fiction plot, it's actually the world's most frustrating regulatory whack-a-mole. The United States passes the Synthetic Drug Abuse Prevention Act of 2012. The UK updates its Misuse of Drugs Act. Australia reclassifies half the periodic table. And still, a new legal high pops up every week. The only thing that changes faster than the chemicals are the street names. Just try keeping a straight face as a politician solemnly lists the dangers of Spice Cloud 9, Blue Magic, Vanilla Sky, and Scooby Snacks. Of course, this constant arms race creates a host of problems for everyone else. Law enforcement, for one, is left playing catch-up. What's the point of field testing if the thing you're testing for was banned last Tuesday and replaced with something even weirder by Thursday? Emergency rooms are forced into a never-ending game of medical charades as doctors attempt to treat patients who are, in essence, walking chemistry experiments with bonus hallucinations. And it's not just the professionals who are confused. Users themselves rarely know what they're taking. The packet says herbal incense, but the ingredient list might as well be written in ancient Sumerian. Lab tested, claims the ad, failing to mention that the lab in question was probably a garden shed behind a KFC. The new legal high promises relaxation, euphoria, and spiritual awakening, but mostly delivers panic attacks, regret, and an urgent desire to call your mom. The lawmakers, bless them, do their best. They try blanket bans, prohibiting entire classes of chemicals rather than individual compounds. They hold hearings, commission studies, And when all else fails, remind everyone that the safest way to get high is with a good night's sleep and a crossword puzzle. But blanket bans come with their own set of issues, potentially outlawing future medicines or research chemicals that could actually help people. Meanwhile, chemists remain undeterred. For every chemical blacklisted, 5 new ones appear on online forums and in gas station display cases. The sellers have all the motivation, profit, novelty, and a customer base that's always searching for something new. The buyers, unfortunately, get all the risk, side effects, ER visits, or a starring role in the next viral news segment. And in the end, who's actually winning? Not lawmakers, not chemists, and certainly not the users. It's a war with no heroes, just a cast of frazzled parents, exhausted doctors, ambitious amateur scientists, and one very tired DEA spokesperson. So, the next time you hear about a new ban or dangerous designer drug, just remember, the arms race continues. The only real winners are the ones smart enough to stay out of the game. The rest, they're just one chemical behind, and always one headline away from becoming this week's cautionary tale. Time to meet the brave, or catastrophically bored souls who actually try zombie drugs. Are they thrill seekers, victims, or just looking for something stronger than decaf? You decide. Let's dispel the myth that everyone who tries a zombie drug is some shadowy figure from an after-school special, lurking in a trench coat and offering suspicious powders to school kids. The reality is, the user base is, well, everyone. College students, construction workers, parents, retirees, people in hoodies, people in business suits, and, yes, people who just got tired of coffee, not delivering the existential crisis they craved. The common thread? Curiosity, desperation, or the simple desire to escape the monotony of reality for an evening, or just a lunch break. Some users are, indeed, the classic thrill seekers. These are the people who read the warning label and think, sounds fun. They climb mountains for the rush, dive off cliffs for the thrill, and, when bungee jumping gets old, try synthetic cathinones just to see if they'll hallucinate their way through the DMV. For them, life is about collecting experiences, regardless of whether those experiences come with a side of psychosis or a starring role on the local news. Others fall into it by accident. Maybe they thought they were buying regular weed, only to discover that their herbal blend was more chemistry experiment than plant product. Maybe a friend handed them a pill at a party, and by the time the world started melting, it was too late to back out. Some are just broke, looking for a cheap buzz, and end up with whatever the gas station is selling for $5 behind the counter. This group often includes first-timers, the deeply trusting, or anyone who's ever uttered the phrase, "How bad could it be?" Then there are those struggling with addiction who don't care what's in the bag as long as it keeps the withdrawal at bay. Zombie drugs prey on the vulnerable, offering a temporary escape from pain, emotional, physical, or both. Some users are in recovery but can't access traditional drugs anymore, so they turn to whatever's legal this week. The revolving door of substances is fueled by desperation and the false promise of it's technically not illegal, so it must be safe. Spoiler, legality and safety rarely overlap. There's also a subset of users who are just bored. Not every wild decision happens in the throes of existential despair or reckless abandon. Sometimes it's Tuesday, your favorite show isn't on, and you're willing to try something called Space Monkey because it sounds like a better idea than laundry. These users often become the accidental pioneers, the ones you hear about in viral videos, dancing in public fountains, or yelling at squirrels about the State of the Union. They didn't set out to make history. History just happened to them while they were looking for a good time. Of course, let's not ignore the accidental users, the people who end up tripping because their vape cartridge or chocolate bar came with a surprise. Thanks to poor labeling and a supply chain that makes the Wild West look organized, plenty of people have joined the ranks of zombie drug users by complete accident. One moment you're at a festival, the next you're convinced your shoes are trying to escape. But why do people keep trying these things, even after the horror stories? Part of it is human nature. Curiosity killed the cat, and satisfaction did not bring it back. Part of it is misinformation. If it's sold in a store, how bad can it really be? And honestly, some people just like rolling the dice. In a world full of rules, zombie drugs promise a brief, chaotic vacation from predictability. So, who tries zombie drugs? People. All kinds of people. The brave, the bored, the broken, and the blissfully unaware. The next time you see a wild headline, remember, behind every bizarre story is a human being who just wanted to feel something different, even if it meant talking to a mailbox or becoming a meme. And as much as we'd love to believe we're above it all, we're all just one bad Tuesday away from making the news ourselves. Old school drugs gave you hallucinations. Zombie drugs give you a starring role in your own personal disaster movie. One minute you're king of the world, next minute you're screaming at a garden gnome. Let's start with a little perspective. Classic hallucinogens, LSD, psilocybin, even a vintage tab of PCP have always had a reputation for altering consciousness. Sure, people saw colors, felt their thoughts dissolve, maybe discovered the secrets of the universe and then forgot them 5 minutes later. But for the most part, those trips were, if not safe, at least somewhat predictable. You took a known quantity, you got a known result, known being relative, of course, to the era's quality control and your friend's definition of just a little. Zombie drugs, however, don't play by the old rules. They're like the home renovation shows of the drug world, full of surprises, unintended consequences, and the occasional collapse of structural integrity. Designer hallucinogens like synthetic cannabinoids, NBOMs, and bath salt blends don't just show you a new reality. They hand you the director's chair and the fog machine, then run away laughing. You're not just watching a movie, you're improvising the script, doing your own stunts, and building the set out of pure anxiety. Take the new class of synthetic hallucinogens. They hit fast and hard, sometimes within seconds of a hit or a pill. You might find yourself convinced that time is running backward, your dog is whispering investment advice, or the living room lamp is plotting against you. At first, it's hilarious until the paranoia sets in. Unlike classic trips, which tend to be dreamy or introspective, zombie drug trips often come with a side order of adrenaline and terror. It's like being launched into a low-budget horror film with a malfunctioning script supervisor. And here's the thing. With traditional hallucinogens, the setting and your mindset, the famous set and setting, were known to guide your experience. If you took mushrooms in a field of daisies with your best friends, you might find God in a cloud. If you took synthetic cannabinoids in your friend's musty basement, you might find yourself trapped in a recurring loop where the pizza box is screaming at you in Morse code. And unlike the old school stuff, the zombie drug trips are often over before you've figured out what's happening, leaving you with a pounding heart, wild stories, and a very real urge to never touch Scooby snacks again. It's not just the mental experience. Zombie hallucinogens bring a physical punch too. There's the racing pulse, the nausea, the wild temperature swings, and the classic urge to sprint, climb, or try to dig your way to freedom. Emergency rooms are filled with people convinced they can fly, teleport, or turn invisible. And in the aftermath, you're just left with a bruised ego, a citation for public nudity, and a strong dislike of your neighbor's garden ornaments. The unpredictability is part of the danger. You never really know what you're getting with these new blends. Each batch is a mystery bag of side effects and psychological torment. Unlike your grandma's day, where the wildest thing that happened on PCP was someone wrestling a bush, today's synthetic trips are more likely to land you on YouTube as the latest cautionary tale. And of course, there's always the morning after. You try to piece together what happened, check your phone for evidence, and pray that nobody caught you reciting Shakespeare to a traffic cone. Meanwhile, somewhere, a new variant is hitting the shelves, promising out-of-body experiences, but usually delivering out-of-sanity regret. So next time you hear about someone losing their mind on a zombie drug, remember, this isn't the gentle haze of the summer of love. It's not your grandma's PCP. It's the adrenaline-fueled, slightly terrifying improv comedy of the modern chemical age. The gnomes are not impressed, and neither is your local ER nurse. It's not just users who suffer. Whole neighborhoods wake up to find their streets starring in the next viral YouTube video, Naked Man Wrestles Fire Hydrant. Zoning laws never saw this coming. Let's zoom out for a second. Imagine you're living in a quiet neighborhood, the kind with picket fences, freshly cut grass, and maybe a stray cat or two. You go to bed on a Tuesday, and by Wednesday morning, your block is a trending topic for all the wrong reasons. Not because someone put up festive holiday lights in July, but because the local news helicopter is hovering over your street, filming what looks like the world's weirdest community theater. A small crowd, a man with suspiciously few clothes, and a fire hydrant that is, apparently, losing a wrestling match. This is the neighborhood apocalypse, zombie drug edition. One person's chemical misadventure quickly becomes a whole community's morning headache. Sirens, flashing lights, gawking passers-by, and that neighbor who's been waiting his whole life to yell, "Think of the children." All it takes is a single trip gone sideways, thanks to bath salts, flakka, or a little packet of herbal incense, and suddenly your street is a backdrop for the latest cautionary tale. For local residents, the fallout is immediate and intense. Property values wobble, the neighborhood watch group gets a surge of sign-ups, and everyone's group chat is blowing up with links to the latest video clip. Is this our street? Is that my mailbox? Why is there a raccoon in the background? The fear isn't just for personal safety, it's that your home is about to become shorthand for chaos in every news segment from here to eternity. City services, meanwhile, are stretched thin. Paramedics and police are called in for scenes that sound like Mad Libs. Responding to a man doing cartwheels in the fountain, possibly under the influence of, well, something not covered in the academy. Hospital emergency rooms see a spike in admissions for bizarre injuries, sprained ankles from leaping fences, burns from hugging lampposts, and mystery rashes from rolling in the neighbor's petunias. Urban planners start holding special meetings to discuss questions nobody ever asked before. Do we need to install more benches for hallucinating residents? Is it time to zone for an official regret recovery area? It isn't just the city infrastructure that takes a hit. Local businesses suddenly find themselves on the front lines. The corner store clerk gets tired of explaining that, no, they do not sell Cloud9 anymore, And the dry cleaner wonders, i.e., how many more shredded pants can possibly come in before the year is out? Coffee shops have to figure out whether to call an ambulance or just offer a glass of water and a gentle reminder that public nudity is, in fact, still illegal. The social fabric phrase, too. Neighbors eye each other with suspicion. Was it Ted from down the block who starred in last night's viral clip? Or that new guy who always gets weird mail? Parents deliver impromptu lectures about stranger danger. Except now the danger might be the guy who helped organize the last block party. Local Facebook groups go from, "Who's got a good plumber?" to, "Does anyone know how to get glitter out of a bird bath?" asking for a friend. And then, of course, comes the stigma. For months, sometimes years, after a particularly infamous incident, the entire neighborhood is branded. Real estate listings get a little more creative. Up-and-coming area, vibrant street life, convenient to emergency services. Residents who never even saw the original incident find themselves defending their zip code to skeptical relatives and potential buyers. But through it all, cities adapt. Emergency services develop new protocols. Outreach teams canvass the streets. Local governments try to thread the needle between compassion and public safety. Eventually, the stories fade. The viral videos get buried under new memes, and the fire hydrant is replaced, hopefully none the worse for wear. So, the next time you see a bizarre clip online and think, where do these people come from? Remember, it might just be your street's turn next. Zoning laws never saw this coming, but then again, nobody ever does. And somewhere, a poor city planner is drafting guidelines for unexpected nudity near public utilities, just in case. What's it like to work at a gas station in the age of zombie drugs? Every day's a surprise. Every sale a potential plot twist, and your only protection is a row of energy drinks and questionable snacks. Picture yourself behind the counter at your average gas station or corner store. It's 11 p.m., and the fluorescent lights are buzzing with the energy of 100 broken dreams. Your coworker is refilling the beef jerky rack. A kid is sneaking glances at the lottery tickets, and you've just scanned your 10,000th energy drink of the week. This is supposed to be an easy gig. Ring up snacks, mop the floor, and make sure nobody tries to microwave nacho cheese again. But ever since zombie drugs hit the market, your job description has expanded. You're no longer just a clerk. You're a gatekeeper, a crisis manager, and occasionally the only person standing between a customer and their next life-ruining decision. Every shift is a choose-your-own-adventure novel where most endings involve calling 911. It starts with the packaging. The herbal incense or bath salts you use to dust off the shelves are suddenly flying out the door. Cloud9, Scooby Snacks, Ivory Wave, all brightly colored and stamped with warnings like "not for human consumption." You know, the universal sign for definitely being consumed by humans. Customers eye the rack, shuffle nervously, and ask in whispers, "Do you have any of that stuff in the back?" You do, but you're not sure what it actually is. No one is. Sometimes you try to explain, "It's for aromatherapy, not whatever you're thinking." But you know that as soon as the shift supervisor looks away, half your customers are aromatizing in the parking lot, then coming back in to buy 3 gallons of blue Gatorade and a bag of Funyuns. Your break room is full of cautionary tales, stories of people passed out at pump number 4, or that guy who started serenading the ice machine until the police arrived. It's all just part of a night's work. You become a reluctant expert in reading body language. Who's here for snacks, and who's here for a journey to another dimension? You can spot the regulars. Some are anxious, some are overly friendly, and some seem to be communicating in a code only understood by other people who have accidentally smoked a chemical designed to keep moths away from sweaters. You learn to spot the subtle signs, wide eyes, nervous laughter, and a sudden, deep interest in the bathroom key. But the real challenge comes after the sale. That's when the unpredictability sets in. One moment, everything is calm. The next, someone is trying to explain the metaphysical properties of potato chips to the ATM. As a clerk, you're first on the scene. You call for help, offer water, or, when things get really wild, attempt to herd an agitated customer outside before they turn the snack aisle into the next viral video. Corporate training manuals didn't prepare you for this. What to do if a customer has an adverse reaction to herbal incense is not in the index. You improvise, you call the police, you make sure your phone is fully charged. Sometimes you find yourself wishing for the simpler days when the only crisis involved running out of scratch-off tickets or mopping up spilled Slurpee. Meanwhile, management is no help. They just want the stuff to sell, regulations or not. The store's policy changes every week as lawmakers ban one compound and suppliers quietly slip in another. Just follow the rules, your boss says, never clarifying what the rules actually are. In the end, you become the city's most reluctant pharmacist, dispensing packages you barely understand to people you're not sure should have them. All you can do is stay alert, keep the number for emergency services handy, and pray the only thing anyone overdoses on tonight is beef jerky. So if you ever see a convenience store clerk giving you the 1,000-yard stare, now you know why. They've seen things. Things involving bath salts, time-traveling couches, and someone trying to pay for gum with a handful of dandelions. It's just another shift in the age of zombie drugs. If you thought being an ER doctor was stressful, try explaining to someone's grandma why her grandson believes he's a lawnmower. Welcome to the front lines of medical chaos. Picture it, a typical Friday night at the emergency room. The waiting area is packed with sprained ankles, mysterious rashes, and people who just don't feel right. In strolls a paramedic team with a new contender for weirdest case of the month. On the stretcher is a young man, eyes wide, shirtless, with fresh grass stains on his chest, and an unwavering conviction that he needs to mow the carpets. This isn't your average flu season. It's zombie drug season, and the doctors are already bracing for another spin of the wheel. The ER staff have seen it all, or at least they thought they had. Bath salts, flakka, space monkey, you name it. Each new synthetic brings a fresh twist on the same old crisis. One minute you're treating someone convinced they're on a spaceship to Venus. The next, you're talking down a patient who believes their own arms are detachable accessories. Triage becomes less about checking vital signs and more about deciphering which reality the patient thinks they're in. There's no handy manual for this. You can go from managing cardiac arrest to conducting an impromptu group therapy session for people who just discovered time is a suggestion. Each case is a medical mystery wrapped in an existential crisis, with bonus points for creativity. The patient in bed 3 says the vending machine is plotting against him. The one in bed 5 thinks she's auditioning for a soap opera called General Delusions. The only predictable thing is that none of these chemicals ever come with an instruction manual, and the ingredient list is a work of speculative fiction. Communication with the families? That's another layer of fun. Imagine breaking the news to a grandmother that her grandson isn't actually possessed. He just smoked something labeled herbal incense at a party. Is he going to be all right? She asks. The honest answer is, probably, but he'll need to spend a few hours being gently reminded that he isn't a push mower. Explaining drug-induced psychosis with equal parts compassion and deadpan is an art form only seasoned ER docs master. The real challenge is that no two cases are the same. Sometimes the symptoms are mostly psychological, paranoia, hallucinations, wild confidence. Other times things turn critical, heart palpitations, violent agitation, seizures. ER doctors have to move fast, all while dodging creative threats like I can teleport or I'm being chased by invisible goats. The tools of the trade: IV fluids, calming words, a security guard who's seen enough to write a memoir, and sometimes a call to poison control, just to confirm that yes, Pink Elephant 2000 is probably not a vitamin supplement. Meanwhile, the rest of the hospital watches in awe as the ER becomes a revolving door of cautionary tales. Interns take notes, veteran nurses share survival tips, and somewhere in the chaos, someone tries to Google how long until you stop believing you're a kitchen appliance. The janitorial staff are unfazed. They've cleaned up after wilder parties. For doctors, it's a blend of detective work and disaster management. There's pride in steering a patient back to reality, but also frustration knowing that next week's batch of legal highs will bring new, unexplained symptoms. By sunrise, the chaos slows. A few patients are sleeping off their chemical adventures. Some are heading home with a newfound respect for reality. Others, well, they might still be looking for the exit to Narnia. And yet, through it all, the ER doctors keep showing up. They patch up, calm down, and when all else fails, offer a gentle laugh. Because if you can't find humor in convincing someone they're not a lawnmower, you're in the wrong line of work. In the zombie drug era, every shift is a roll of the dice, and no one ever bets on normal. Ever wondered what actually happens inside your body after a hit of synthetic cathinones? Neither did most users, but the answer is chaos, confusion, and the occasional bout of impromptu dental work. Let's break it down, one molecule at a time. Synthetic cathinones. The primary culprits in many zombie drug horror stories are lab-made cousins of the natural stimulant found in the cat plant. In their plant form, cathinones are chewed for a mild buzz and a bit of energy. Think espresso shot, not apocalypse. But when some ambitious chemist decides to tweak the structure, concentrate the effect, and then sell it as bath salts, the results are less gentle pick-me-up and more roller coaster with no seatbelt. You take a hit, maybe a line, a pill, or a puff from a packet labeled "not for human consumption." Within minutes, your central nervous system is flooded with signals. Synthetic cathinones work by releasing a tsunami of neurotransmitters: dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. And these are the chemicals that make you feel happy, alert, and, occasionally, like you could challenge a bulldozer to a foot race. Your heart pounds, your pupils dilate, and your thoughts start racing at Formula One speed. For some, it's euphoria. For others, it's an instant ticket to Panic City. But the chaos doesn't stop with a mental joyride. Your cardiovascular system gets in on the fun, pumping blood at a pace your arteries were never designed to handle. Blood pressure soars, the heart rate jumps, and if you're especially unlucky, you might find yourself flirting with a heart attack or stroke before you can say, maybe this wasn't a great idea. Ever wonder why people on zombie drugs are sometimes found sprinting naked through traffic? That's their fight or flight response, having a complete meltdown, with no off switch in sight. Meanwhile, your muscles tense up like you're preparing for the world's strangest bodybuilding competition. Jaw clenching and teeth grinding are so common that ER docs sometimes call it bath salt bite. If you thought dental bills were scary before, try explaining to your dentist that you broke a molar trying to chew through imaginary chains. In extreme cases, the muscle rigidity can get so severe it leads to hyperthermia, a dangerous spike in body temperature that can literally cook you from the inside out. And then there's the mind. Zombie drugs love to throw a party in your brain, inviting hallucinations, paranoia, and delusions as the guests of honor. Reality fractures. You see, hear, and believe things that simply aren't there. One minute you're convinced you can communicate with insects. The next, you're terrified that your own shadow is plotting against you. If your sense of time and space feels like it's being rewritten by a sleep-deprived fiction writer, congratulations. You're now starring in your own neurological drama. But here's the real kicker. The chemistry keeps changing. To stay ahead of the law, clandestine labs are constantly tweaking the molecules, creating new variants with effects and risks nobody can fully predict. You might try White Rush one week and Ivory Wave the next, and wind up with wildly different trips, symptoms, and regrets. Medical professionals, caught in this chemical arms race, are forced to play catch-up, never entirely sure what they're treating when a new case stumbles in the ER. And don't forget the aftermath. The come down from synthetic cathinones is as brutal as the high, agitation, depression, insomnia, and a desperate thirst that no amount of Gatorade can quench. In some cases, there's psychosis that lingers for days or even weeks. For the unlucky, it's not just a night gone sideways, it's a lasting change in brain chemistry, a memory that follows you long after the high fades. So next time you hear someone talk about bath salts or plant food as a shortcut to a good time, remember, your body isn't a chemistry set, and your brain definitely didn't sign up for this experiment. When science goes rogue, the only guarantee is chaos. And maybe, just maybe, a future filled with dental appointments you'd rather not explain. Can bath salts really give you superhuman strength? Did someone really eat an entire police cruiser? Let's dig through the urban legends and separate science from clickbait. First, let's acknowledge the obvious. Zombie drugs come with some of the wildest press coverage and internet rumors this side of a late-night UFO sighting. Every time a new synthetic hits the streets, the stories start to snowball, fueled by shaky cell phone videos, excitable news anchors, and your uncle's Facebook posts. Before you know it, the line between reality and Reddit has completely disappeared. Let's start with the most persistent myth, the idea that zombie drugs, especially bath salts, can give users superhuman strength. You've seen the headlines. Man high on bath salts throws car across parking lot. Woman on flakka bench presses fire hydrant. In reality, the science is a lot less cinematic. Bath salts are stimulants, and yes, they can cause people to feel extremely agitated, paranoid, and occasionally resistant to pain. That means someone might struggle violently, not because they've turned into the Hulk, but because their body is flooded with adrenaline, and their brain is convinced it's being chased by shadow monsters. It's more like a panic attack dialed up to 11, not a Marvel origin story. Now for the next myth. Did anyone ever actually eat an entire police cruiser? Thankfully for car manufacturers everywhere, the answer is a resounding no. While some users on zombie drugs have bitten, chewed, or tried to gnaw on inedible things, Mailboxes, furniture, the occasional arm. There's no credible evidence of a person taking down an entire Ford Crown Victoria one mouthful at a time. The infamous face-eating incident in Miami set off a global panic, but even in that extreme case, toxicology reports were murky at best. And the main culprit might have been mental illness or plain, old-fashioned bad luck in the Florida sun. What about hallucinations so vivid that people think they can fly, or that they're being chased by government agents disguised as squirrels? This one has some truth to it. Many zombie drugs, especially synthetic cannabinoids and certain cathinones, are notorious for causing intense paranoia and wild, movie-worthy hallucinations. But jumping out a window believing you can fly isn't new or unique to these drugs. Similar delusions have been reported for decades with classic substances like PCP or LSD. The difference is that zombie drugs are unpredictable. One person's mild trip is another person's I fought a fire hydrant and lost. Another myth. Zombie drugs are instantly addictive after a single use. While these substances can be extremely habit-forming, especially for people struggling with underlying mental health issues or addiction, they don't instantly rewire your brain like some kind of villainous super serum. The real danger lies in the combination of accessibility, the urge to escape reality, and the unpredictable effects. The cycle can start quickly, but it's rarely a one-and-done transformation into a midnight shuffler. Let's talk about the viral videos. You've seen them. People contorting on sidewalks, stripping naked, running from invisible enemies, or reciting Shakespeare to a lamppost. These moments make for great clickbait, but don't capture the much more common reality of zombie drug use. People alone, isolated, dealing with confusion, nausea, and deep regret. Not everyone becomes a meme. Most simply wish they hadn't trusted that packet from the gas station. And finally, there's the myth that zombie drugs are everywhere and nobody is safe. The real picture is less apocalyptic. These substances are definitely dangerous, but outbreaks tend to be localized, fueled by waves of media coverage, changes in drug supply, and a whole lot of social panic. Most people will never encounter someone high on bath salts in the wild, and if you avoid buying unlabeled powder from a guy named Snake, your risk remains low. So the next time you see a headline about a superhuman, face-eating zombie on bath salts, take a breath. Separate fact from fiction. Science from viral fear. The truth is bizarre enough. There's no need to add capes, car eating, or government squirrels to the story. Reality, as always, is strange enough on its own. Every new law creates a new loophole, every ban a new black market. It's a game that nobody wins, except maybe the guy selling incense out of his trunk. Let's take a step back and admire the grand spectacle known as the war on drugs. You might picture bold-faced headlines, grim press conferences, and entire agencies built to fight the good fight against chemical chaos. The truth? If history is any guide, it's less an epic struggle and more like watching someone try to hold back the tide with a sandcastle and a strongly worded email. For every synthetic substance that appears, bath salts, spice, flakka, Cloud 9, lawmakers rush in with bans and regulations. Task forces are assembled, pamphlets are printed, and stern warnings go out on every channel. Sometimes the packages are pulled from store shelves, and sometimes there's a brief lull in news stories about public nudity and mailbox serenades. For about 5 minutes, there's hope that the problem has been solved. But chemists, bless their caffeinated hearts, see a ban as just another item on their to-do list. A molecule gets outlawed? No problem. They simply tweak a few atoms, call the new version Incense Extreme, and send it right back into the world, usually through channels even more shadowy and unregulated than before. It's the legislative version of playing whack-a-mole on hard mode. No sooner is one substance illegal than another, nearly identical one, pops up to take its place. This constant churn keeps everyone off balance. Users have no idea what's really in the packet they just bought, only that it's the latest thing. Law enforcement is stuck trying to predict tomorrow's crisis based on yesterday's lab results. Politicians are left explaining why, despite another round of tough-sounding laws, the weird packets and wilder headlines just keep coming. The only people making a steady profit are the underground chemists, convenience store owners with flexible ethics, and, of course, the guy selling herbal incense out of the trunk of a car parked at the back of the strip mall. But the black market isn't just bigger, it's bolder. Once a product gets banned, sellers move online, offshore, or into the hands of dealers who aren't interested in following even the loose rules that gas station clerks once, sort of, respected. The risk gets pushed downstream. Now, not only do users have to worry about the contents of their legal high, but also about scams, contamination, or the small but real chance that their package comes with a side order of law enforcement. It's a lose-lose situation for everyone but the boldest or most desperate. And let's be honest, the policies themselves often create more problems than they solve. Blanket bans sometimes catch research chemicals and medications that could actually help people. Public campaigns focus more on fear than fact, leaving people confused about what's dangerous and what's merely the punchline of the latest viral video. Meanwhile, actual drug users, the people most in need of help, are caught between a constantly shifting supply and a world that sees them less as humans and more as walking warning labels. All of this keeps the arms race going. As soon as a loophole is closed, another opens, sometimes literally overnight. From city council meetings to congressional hearings, the game continues. Lawmakers try to outpace science. Sellers try to outpace. Lawmakers and users try to find a high that won't land them in the ER or on the evening news. So, what's the solution? If history is any guide, there's no simple fix. It's a mess of chemistry, policy, and human behavior that won't be solved by the next ban or a clever campaign slogan. Maybe the best we can do is learn from the past, help the people caught in the crossfire, and admit that sometimes the only winner in the war on new drugs is the guy selling incense, with a wink, a nudge, and a strictly not for human consumption warning on the label. And in the meantime, don't buy anything from a trunk, especially if the only ingredient listed is fun. If a guy screams at pigeons and nobody posted on TikTok, did it even happen? Zombie drugs aren't just a crisis, they're trending content, because why not live stream your trip to the ER? Welcome to the age when nothing is truly real, unless someone's smartphone is pointed at it. A decade ago, if someone lost their mind on bath salts, it might have been the subject of neighborhood gossip, or, at worst, a headline in the local paper. Now, it's a trending hashtag before the ambulance even pulls up. 1 minute you're dancing with imaginary raccoons in a parking lot. The next, you're starring in a video called Florida Man Rides Alligator, CITES Spice. It starts innocently enough. Someone notices a person behaving oddly in public, singing love songs to a mailbox, conversing with street signs, or trying to outstare a fire hydrant. Instead of calling for help or looking away, bystanders reach for their phones. The result? Instant content for Instagram stories, Snapchat, or whatever platform hasn't been banned by Congress this week. No one wants to miss out on the next viral hit, especially if it could rack up millions of views and a few seconds of social media fame. The cycle is as predictable as it is troubling. A clip goes up. It gets shared, reposted, and remixed with the latest meme soundtracks. Before the dust settles, local news picks it up, then national media, and suddenly everyone's talking about the zombie outbreak in Springfield or the flakka fiasco in Fort Lauderdale. Overnight, the world knows the name of your street and the color of your neighbor's underwear, thanks to an unfortunate wardrobe malfunction mid-hallucination. For people caught on camera, the consequences can be brutal. Their moment of drug-induced confusion, terror, or just plain bad luck is immortalized, passed around as comedy, shock value, or a warning sign, often without any context or compassion. Nobody knows the backstory, or the person's struggles, or the fact that the zombie is actually someone's kid, friend, or partner. In the comment sections, empathy is in short supply. Mockery, on the other hand, is unlimited. Meanwhile, the cycle feeds itself. Viral videos fuel new waves of panic and urban legends. Lawmakers, desperate to seem responsive, cite trending clips as evidence for new crackdowns. Emergency rooms brace for more cases, now with the added challenge that everyone's cousin is tagging them in videos of someone licking the side of a bus. What used to be a private health crisis is now public entertainment, and the boundaries between concern, voyeurism, and exploitation get blurrier with every retweet. Of course, some people lean in, treating the chaos like a challenge. Bath salts challenge, someone announces, and suddenly you have dozens of imitators, each determined to outdo the last with the most outlandish, shocking behavior, sometimes even faking it for clicks. When the reward for outrageousness is fame, why not add a little extra drama? That's how you end up with a generation of internet daredevils who treat the ER as just another backdrop for their highlight reel. But behind the views, there's always a real story. The people featured in these viral moments aren't characters in a game. They're humans in crisis, often scared, confused, and deeply unwell. They deserve help, not a remix set to yakety sax. Unfortunately, the internet rarely takes time for nuance, especially when the next trending video is just a scroll away. So, the next time you see a clip of someone tripping out in public, pause before you hit share. Remember, there's a world of difference between raising awareness and piling on. If a guy screams at pigeons and nobody posts it on TikTok, maybe, just maybe, it's a small mercy. Because not every disaster needs an audience, and not every crisis should be content. Sometimes, kindness is letting someone's worst moment stay offline, forever buried in the scroll of forgotten stories. How do you make poison sound appealing? Just slap "not for human consumption" on the label, toss in a smiley face, and wait for the lawsuits. Let's talk marketing genius, or at least the kind of marketing that would make a snake oil salesman blush with pride. The world of legal highs isn't about elegant design or medical transparency. It's about bright colors, wild names, and packaging that looks more like candy for grown-up children than what it actually is. A chemical gamble with your sanity. Welcome to the only industry where calling your product zombie dust or Cloud9 is a legitimate sales tactic. Step into any head shop, sketchy gas station, or corner store in the mid-2010s, and you'll see rows of little foil packets and plastic vials, each with a name more ridiculous than the last. Mad Hatter, Space Monkey, Scooby Snacks, all promising a party in your brain, with no mention of the after party in the ER. The instructions are almost always the same. potpourri, aromatherapy, bath additive, and of course the classic, not for human consumption. This is the universe's most poorly kept secret. Nobody's buying incense to sprinkle in their sock drawer at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. The disclaimer isn't just for laughs. It's a loophole, a lawyer's shield, and a confession all rolled into one. By declaring their product isn't meant to be eaten, smoked, or snorted, sellers sidestep regulation, or at least try to. It's like selling cookies and insisting they're for display purposes only. If someone eats them, well, that's on them, right? The absurdity is the point. The more ridiculous the label, the more plausible the denial, and it works at least until it doesn't. The FDA, DEA, and pretty much every other three-letter agency have spent years playing catch-up, banning one ingredient only to have a new, not for human consumption blend pop up the next week. The result is a dizzying arms race of packaging and chemistry. One week, you can buy White Rush with a holographic unicorn on the front. The next, it's been replaced by Unicorn Blizzard, identical in every way except the ingredient list and a slightly more menacing shade of glitter. Consumers, meanwhile, aren't fooled, but they are curious. Legal highs promise the thrill of breaking the rules without technically breaking the law. They're appealing because they're available, affordable, and on the surface, safer than the sketchy stuff sold in baggies. It's the ultimate illusion. You buy it in a store, it comes with a warning, and it's not even illegal, at least not this week. But the price of clever branding is paid in real emergencies. Legal highs are a chemical roulette wheel. You might get a mild buzz, or you might wake up in a hospital bed, wondering why you tried to pet a mailbox. There's no regulation, no quality control, and no guarantee that what's in the package this time is even remotely similar to last time. For every happy customer leaving a 5-star review, made me see colors, there's another with a horror story to tell and an ER bill to prove it. The lawsuits, when they arrive, are a carnival of confusion. Who's responsible? The manufacturer, the store, the person who actually consumed the not for human consumption incense? The answer is usually everyone and no one. And while the courts argue it out, the next batch of clever branding is already on the shelves. So, the next time you see a packet of something called Space Party with a warning label that looks like it was designed by a teenager with a sticker addiction, remember, the only thing more dangerous than what's inside is the illusion of safety. Sometimes the cleverest marketing is just a smokescreen for doom, and not for human consumption is less a warning and more a dare. If you want a real high, stick to fresh air and good music. If the label says not for humans, take the hint. Smiley faces can't fix broken brains, no matter how clever the packaging. Quitting zombie drugs isn't just about willpower. It's about surviving the world's worst hangover and a sudden desire to never see a fluorescent light again. Good luck. Let's set the scene. You've just made the life-altering decision to quit the mystery powder, the herbal incense, the little foil packet that once promised adventure but mostly delivered a steady stream of regret. You're ready to turn over a new leaf, a real one, not the kind sprayed with lab chemicals and labeled not for human consumption. All that's left is to get through the part nobody likes to talk about: withdrawal. Detoxing from zombie drugs isn't the Hollywood scene where you sweat it out under dramatic lighting with a caring nurse holding your hand. No, this is the gritty reboot. 72 hours of crawling skin, pounding headaches, anxiety that feels like your heart's trying to escape, and dreams that could win awards for special effects. It's like your body is hosting its own film festival. and every entry is a psychological thriller starring your central nervous system. The first step is the crash. That chemical high racing thoughts, endless energy, the confidence to challenge a street sign to a debate turns into exhaustion and dread. Sleep becomes a myth. Food tastes like cardboard, and even the soft hum of a refrigerator feels like a personal attack. Your bones ache, your teeth grind, and your only companion is the gnawing realization that just one more hit won't make this go away. Then there are the cravings. Every cell in your body seems to remember the rush, the escape, the feeling of being someone or somewhere else. Your brain runs highlight reels of the good times, skipping right past the episodes that ended in an ER visit or a viral video. Add to that the joy of paranoia and mood swings, and suddenly your houseplants are looking at you funny. Friends and family want to help, but unless they've experienced it, they mostly just offer soup, hugs, or the number for a yoga instructor. None of those things help when your skin feels like it's made of static electricity. Medical detox is an option, but not everyone has access or the desire to spend 3 days in a facility where the only entertainment is daytime TV and group therapy. Some people try to quit cold turkey, armed with determination, gallons of water, and a Google search history that could land them on a watch list. Others get support from friends, recovery groups, or the internet's infinite supply of motivational quotes. But no matter the method, everyone discovers the same truth. Detoxing is lonely, miserable, and most of all, humbling. Physical symptoms are only half the battle. Zombie drugs don't just mess with your body, they tangle up your emotions too. Anxiety, depression, guilt, shame, and waves of boredom roll in like the world's most inconvenient weather pattern. Every little victory, a night of sleep, a real meal, a walk in the sunlight feels monumental. Every setback feels like you've lost a round in a boxing match with your own brain. The urge to give up, to just slide back into the comfort of numbness, is always lurking. But here's the twist. People do make it through. They survive the headaches, the hallucinations, the 1,000-yard stares in the mirror. They rediscover hobbies, relationships, and the strange pleasure of a quiet mind. Life doesn't go back to normal overnight. Sometimes it never does, but it gets better. And the more days that pass, the more distance you put between yourself and the chaos, the more you remember what it feels like to be present, to be yourself. Detoxing from zombie drugs isn't glamorous, inspiring, or fun. It's just real, raw, and sometimes a little bit ridiculous. But for every horror story, there's a quiet victory, someone who made it through the worst of it and lived to complain about fluorescent lighting another day. So if you're on the road back, keep going. The hangover will fade, the cravings will weaken, and someday, even the memory of herbal incense will be just another plot twist in the wild, weird saga of being human. Good luck. You're not alone, even if it sometimes feels that way. After all this, what have we learned? Maybe that humanity is endlessly inventive, spectacularly foolish, and surprisingly resilient. Or maybe we just need better hobbies. Let's take a breath and look back at the bizarre, twisting road we've traveled, from gas station bath salts to Russian crocodile and the viral mayhem of flakka-fueled escapades. It's easy to laugh or cringe at the headlines and horror stories, but underneath the chaos, the story of zombie drugs is also the story of what it means to be human, messy, hopeful, stubborn, and always searching for something more, even if it leads us straight into the arms of a garden gnome. First, let's give a reluctant round of applause to human creativity. Only our species could look at a lab chemical designed for keeping moths out of sweaters and wonder, would this be fun to snort? Throughout history, people have chased transcendence, escape, or just a good time, whether through ancient mushrooms or modern incense with a warning label and a cartoon unicorn. Zombie drugs are the latest in a long line of risky experiments. Proof that when a door closes, usually because lawmakers padlocked it, we just invent a new window and sometimes forget to check if it's on the 12th floor. But for all that creativity, there's also a spectacular lack of foresight. We build marvels and then try to smoke them. Every new legal high is greeted with a blend of optimism and denial. This time, it'll be different. Surely the packet labeled "not for human consumption" is just a funny suggestion. We want shortcuts to happiness, instant escapes from boredom or pain, and, failing that, at least a good story to tell the neighbors. The result? An arms race of chemistry, an endless supply of regret, and the occasional viral video of someone wrestling a mailbox in broad daylight. And yet, buried beneath the bad decisions, there's a deep well of resilience. Because for every headline about zombie drugs, there are people who quit, survive, and put their lives back together. Doctors who patch up the damage. Families who never give up. Harm reduction advocates who hand out clean needles and a bit of compassion. Neighborhoods that rally together after the fire hydrant incident, determined to clean up and move on. There's something stubbornly hopeful about the way people keep trying, keep recovering, and keep laughing, even if it's a little nervously, at the absurdity of it all. What else have we learned? Maybe that our systems, legal, medical, social, are always a few steps behind human ingenuity, but that doesn't mean we stop trying. Every new synthetic disaster teaches public health workers something new. Lawmakers fumble forward, parents learn what to look out for, and ER nurses develop a sixth sense for bath salt bite. We adapt, sometimes slowly, sometimes with a lot of yelling and paperwork, but adapt we do. And let's not forget the power of a good story. The saga of zombie drugs reminds us that history isn't just dusty dates and boring kings. Sometimes it's a series of wild nights, tragic headlines, and bizarre cautionary tales that become modern folklore. The next time someone warns you not to buy herbal incense from a guy named Snake, you're living the legacy of this odd chapter in human history. But maybe, just maybe, the biggest lesson is that we need better hobbies. There are safer ways to chase adventure, connect, and feel alive, ones that don't involve eating faces or arguing with traffic cones. Learn to bake bread, call a friend, write a letter, or just take a nap. Because if the undead saga of zombie drugs teaches us anything, it's that the search for happiness is universal, but the route we take matters. So, as we close this tale of madness, resilience, and very questionable chemistry, remember, the next chapter is up to you. Be curious, be cautious, and never underestimate humanity's ability to turn even the strangest mistake into a lesson and a laugh worth sharing. Not even Fido is safe. As zombie drugs flood the streets, veterinarians are seeing dogs who accidentally ate a gram of happy cloud off the sidewalk and now think they're helicopters. What happens when your golden retriever needs an exorcism and a nap? And who exactly do you call when the family cat starts reciting Shakespeare in reverse? Let's start in the backyard, a place that, until recently, was a relatively safe haven for your average squirrel-chasing, tail-wagging pet. But these days, with zombie drugs making their way from the corners of nightclubs and back alleys to the cracks in the sidewalk. Even a simple walk can turn into an accidental trip through the looking glass. It doesn't take much. A dropped baggie, a forgotten wrapper, a bath salt packet that looks suspiciously like a dog treat. One sniff, one curious lick, and suddenly your loyal companion is starring in their own episode of Animal Planet, Paranormal Edition. It starts with confusion. Maybe your normally reserved tabby is sprinting in circles, yowling at shadows and attempting to climb the iwi-diu fridge like it's Mount Everest. Or your dog, always the model of discipline, is convinced he can fly by spinning in place fast enough to achieve liftoff. Pets don't read warning labels, and they certainly don't listen to not for animal consumption disclaimers. For them, the world is one big taste test, and synthetic drugs are just another thing to sample, like dead crickets or that suspicious patch of grass. For the humans involved, it's panic. Suddenly your living room looks like the set of a low-budget horror movie. The cat is foaming at the mouth. The dog's eyes are wide and wild, and you're on the phone with the vet, frantically Googling phrases like "can dogs hallucinate" and how to unpossess a parakeet. If you're lucky, the symptoms are mild: restlessness, drooling, a sudden fondness for jazz hands. If you're not, it's seizures, tremors, or a full-on trip to the emergency animal hospital. Veterinarians, bless them, are seeing it all. Synthetic cannabinoids, cathinones, and other legal highs don't just baffle human doctors, they confound vets too. The effects on animals can be unpredictable and severe. Because pets are smaller and metabolize drugs differently, a dose that might cause a person to do a dramatic interpretive dance is enough to send a Pomeranian into orbit. Emergency clinics report everything from extreme agitation to comas. The treatments are mostly supportive: IV fluids, sedatives, a safe place to ride it out, but sometimes the outcome is tragic. And all because your golden retriever wanted to taste test the universe. It's not just about individual pets either. Communities face new challenges when zombie drugs are everywhere. Stray animals rummaging through trash cans spread panic when they show up disoriented or aggressive. Shelters are overwhelmed with pets who need detox and round-the-clock observation. Animal control officers now add drug-related behavioral incidents to their already bizarre job descriptions. Some cities have even issued public service announcements urging pet owners to keep a close eye on what their animals sniff, lick, or chew, an impossible task, as any hound owner will tell you. And then there's the emotional toll. Pet owners feel helpless, guilty, even terrified when their furry friend turns into a pint-sized tornado of chaos. The family cat's Hamlet monologue might be funny for the first 10 seconds, but it's not so amusing when the trip turns into trembling, vomiting, or hours of incoherent meowing. There's no way to explain to your pet why the world suddenly got so weird. All you can do is wait it out, and maybe promise them a life of nothing but plain kibble and filtered water from now on. So, what's the lesson here? Zombie drugs don't just affect humans. They ripple through families, neighborhoods, and yes, the animal kingdom. It's one more reason to advocate for safer streets, better disposal, and a little more common sense. If your cat's soliloquy starts getting existential, maybe it's time for a vet visit, not a standing ovation. And if your dog tries to take off like a helicopter, just remember, in the age of zombie drugs, even the pets are along for the ride. What possesses a grown adult to snort something labeled research chemical just because it isn't technically banned yet? Welcome to the wild world of legal highs, where it's not illegal becomes the world's worst medical plan and the world's best excuse for an ER visit. Let's step into the mind of the modern risk-taker, the connoisseur of sort of legal experiences. You're not a hardened criminal. You're not even especially rebellious. Maybe you just finished a long work week and decided you deserve something exciting, or at least confusing. So you wander into your local head shop or scroll through a neon-lit website, and there it is, a foil packet labeled "For Research Purposes Only." It's sold as incense, plant food, or aromatherapy, never, ever as something you're meant to ingest. Which, naturally, makes you wonder, how bad could it be? After all, it's not illegal. You wouldn't break the law. The packet even has a cartoon frog on the front, and a warning that seems less like a deterrent and more like a challenge. In a world full of rules, loopholes are the last playground of the bold and the bored. If it's on the shelf, you reason, it can't possibly be that dangerous. Maybe just a little risky, like ordering gas station sushi or using expired sunscreen. That's the seductive logic of legal highs. If it's legal, it must be safe, right? Or at least safer than whatever the guy in the trench coat behind the bowling alley is selling. So you take the plunge, and in doing so, join the grand tradition of people throughout history who have trusted packaging more than common sense. What could go wrong with research chemicals besides everything? For many, the appeal is novelty, a chance to try something new and edgy without risking jail time or a criminal record. It feels almost responsible in a weird way. Why bother with illegal drugs when the gas station has something cheaper, shinier, and best of all, untouched by pesky drug laws? You picture a scientist in a white coat, thoughtfully testing the product, perhaps with a clipboard and a polite British accent. In reality, that scientist is probably a chemistry student named Greg, who's one lab accident away from becoming a cautionary tale. Of course, what the label doesn't mention is the real risk. Legal highs are only legal because the laws haven't caught up yet, not because anyone has proven they're safe. You could be getting a gentle stimulant, a powerful hallucinogen, or a one-way ticket to live streaming your existential crisis in the ER. The ingredient list is as much a work of fiction as the herbal blend claim, and batch-to-batch consistency is about as reliable as a three-legged chair. The aftermath is as predictable as it is tragicomic. For every story that ends with a shrug and a never again, there are 10 that end with a frantic call to poison control, a regret-filled Google search, or a very awkward conversation with your doctor about why your teeth are chattering, and you can't stop narrating your own actions in third person. ER staff have heard it all, but it was legal. I found it on the shelf at the mini-mart. The frog on the label looked trustworthy, and when things go sideways, as they so often do, the legal gray area turns out to be a lot less forgiving than it seemed. Insurance claims get complicated. Medical records get longer. You might even find yourself on a government watch list, flagged for research that nobody wants to fund. Worst of all, you discover that the label "not for human consumption" isn't just a legal disclaimer. It's solid life advice. So next time you find yourself tempted by a loophole, remember, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's safe. In the world of zombie drugs, the only thing more unpredictable than the chemistry is the logic we use to justify trying it. The law will catch up eventually, but by then, you'll probably be trying to explain to your cat why you're both terrified of the toaster. In the end, it was legal, so I tried it might be the world's worst defense and the world's best punchline. Pharmacists used to worry about handwriting. Now they're deciphering whether a prescription for herbal incense is for relaxation or for an impromptu wrestling match with a mailbox. What's it like working behind the counter when every customer could be a case study in poor decisions? Step into the shoes of your friendly neighborhood pharmacist, a role that used to be about counting pills, offering flu shots, and occasionally deciphering hieroglyphic doctor scrawl. These days, you're part detective, part therapist, and part bouncer at a club no one wanted to join. The cast of characters lining up at your counter would make any reality show jealous. Sleep-deprived parents, anxious students, seniors with long lists, and now the new wave, the zombie drug explorers. Gone are the days when the biggest mystery was whether once daily meant before or after breakfast. Now, you're handed a prescription for plant food, herbal incense, or bath salts, and have to keep a straight face while someone inquires about side effects. "Will this make my headaches go away?" they ask, while subtly eyeing the aisle with the energy drinks and beef jerky. You start to recognize the telltale signs: nervous laughter, vague descriptions of relaxation, and a keen interest in anything labeled not for human consumption. The modern pharmacy is a crossroads for loopholes and desperation. In some neighborhoods, pill mills operate out in the open, selling anything that can fit into a bottle with a warning sticker. The line between medicine and misadventure blurs when a customer asks about the proper dosage for a product that, legally speaking, isn't even supposed to cross their lips. You run interference between curious teens, stressed out adults, and the parade of people convinced that if it's sold in a pharmacy, it must be safe. Every day is a fresh challenge. You consult databases, read up on the latest warnings, and attend corporate webinars with titles like Emerging Substances of Concern. What's new? This week, your break room is plastered with notices about changing regulations, sketchy new brands, and advice for dealing with the inevitable fallout. Even the automated phone system has been updated. Press 4 if you're experiencing hallucinations or existential dread. The customer stories pile up. There's the guy who wants to know if he can mix Scooby snacks with his antidepressants. The grandmother who brings in a packet of White Rush and whispers, "My grandson says it's for his science project." The college student who asks about the shelf life of Cloud9 and whether it's gluten-free. You've seen it all. And sometimes you wonder if the only person who truly understands is the security guard who's been working the night shift since the Reagan administration. And then there's the aftermath. The phone rings off the hook with questions from frantic family members. "He's acting strange. What did you give him?" You want to say, "Madam, we sold him a legal loophole and a bad idea." But professionalism wins, and you walk them through the options: water, fresh air, maybe a call to poison control. When an ambulance shows up in your parking lot, you're the one who has to explain what herbal incense actually does to the human brain, and why nobody's reading the label anyway. Behind the counter, the pressure builds. You balance the need to keep customers happy with the very real fear that you'll be on the hook for someone's bad night, or worse. Every new ban means new products, new questions, and another crash course in chemistry. There's a certain dark humor among pharmacists. At least with opioids, we knew what to expect. At the end of the day, you do your best, dispensing advice, reading warning labels aloud, and quietly rooting for your customers to make it through the week without a viral video or a trip to the ER. Pharmacy school didn't prepare you for this, but here you are, badge, name tag, and all, hoping tomorrow's questions are a little more boring. And if anyone asks, yes, you can recommend something for a headache. Just don't ask about the herbal incense. The mailbox still hasn't forgiven you. It's not just an American story. From British spice zombies shambling through London parks to Russian crocodile disasters, every country gets its own version of "Don't Eat That." Let's take a quick tour of the global zombie circuit, where the only thing more terrifying than the drugs are the public health warnings. Start in the United Kingdom, where the phrase "spice zombie" is now part of the local dialect. Synthetic cannabinoids, called spice, flooded the streets in the 2010s, offering a legal high that turned users into slow-moving, slack-jawed specters. The parks of Manchester and London suddenly looked like audition reels for the next apocalypse film. It wasn't just isolated chaos, either. Entire city blocks saw crowds of people hunched over, unresponsive, or shouting at lampposts in a haze of chemical confusion. Local authorities, used to dealing with drunks and the occasional rowdy football fan, found themselves handing out blankets, water, and stern advice. Don't buy your drugs from someone selling herbal incense out of a backpack. Hop over to continental Europe and you'll find similar scenes. In Germany, France, and Spain, waves of legal highs with names like Bloom or Crystal swept through youth hostels and music festivals. Governments scrambled to pass blanket bans on substances that, only a month before, had been totally legal. The black market was always a step ahead, churning out new formulas and sending public health officials into a frenzy of paperwork and press releases. Doctors grew accustomed to seeing cases that made no medical sense. Seizures, hallucinations, and, once, a guy who swore his backpack was talking to him in fluent Italian. Further east, things take a darker turn. In Russia and parts of Eastern Europe, crocodile emerged as the zombie drug of choice for those unable to afford heroin. As previously chronicled, this DIY disaster involves home-brewed desomorphine, cooked up with codeine tablets, gasoline, and industrial solvents. The result? Users with necrotic skin, exposed bone, and a look that can only be described as undead chic. Russian public health ads pulled no punches. Billboard campaigns featured close-ups of crocodile wounds alongside messages like, "This is not special effects. This is real." For once, the warning was more terrifying than the drug itself. Travel to Australia, and you'll find a slightly different approach, one that combines stern law enforcement with tongue-in-cheek public health campaigns. Legal highs may have started in the back of head shops, but soon government crackdowns pushed the trade underground. Meanwhile, local news ran stories about party pills gone wrong, complete with dramatic reenactments and helpful lists of symptoms. If you think your friend is a zombie, please do not lock them in the shed. Sound advice, all things considered. And then there's Asia, where each country has its own horror story. In Japan, synthetic stimulants marketed as bath salts or aroma liquids have been linked to violent outbursts and car accidents. In China, illicit labs export designer chemicals worldwide, creating a global supply chain that would make Amazon jealous. Even tiny Singapore, known for its strict drug laws, has seen scares over so-called new psychoactive substances, prompting public shaming campaigns and high-tech detection at border checkpoints. But while the details differ, the pattern is eerily familiar. A new drug appears, authorities panic, the media inflates the weirdest stories, and then, almost inevitably, some clever chemist tweaks the formula, starting the whole cycle again. Meanwhile, ordinary people get caught in the crossfire, confused, addicted, and occasionally viral on YouTube. Public health agencies do their best. In the UK, harm reduction groups offer testing kits and safe spaces. In Australia, mobile outreach teams bring help to the hardest hit areas. In Russia, some NGOs provide wound care and support, battling both stigma and bureaucracy. Everyone knows the rules. Don't eat that. Don't smoke that. And, for heaven's sake, don't believe the packet when it says potpourri. So next time you see a story about zombie drugs in some far-off country, remember, every nation has its monsters, its chemists, and its optimists with poor impulse control. The real global epidemic isn't just the drugs, it's the stubborn human hope that this time things will be different. Spoiler alert, they rarely are. So tonight, as you lay back in your perfectly legal bed, surrounded by clean sheets and a refreshing lack of homemade stimulants, let's take a quiet moment to appreciate the sheer absurdity and resilience of the human spirit. Because if there's one thing history keeps proving, it's that people will try just about anything in search of a good time, a quick escape, or maybe just a story for the next family reunion. Sometimes that story ends with a Nobel Prize, and sometimes it ends with a guy biting a traffic cone on live TV. Remember, there was a time, not so long ago, when you could stroll into a convenience store and accidentally buy something that made you hallucinate that your left shoe was plotting against you. Through every wave of panic, policy, and poorly labeled packets, people have found a way to muddle through, to recover, to rebuild, and if nothing else, to warn their friends never to trust anything called Cloud 9. So as you drift off, maybe whisper a little thank you for modern medicine, for the pharmacist who checks your ID, and for that little voice in your head that wonders, should I really put this in my mouth? Be grateful for clean water, safe neighborhoods, and the fact that the wildest thing in your fridge is probably expired yogurt, not experimental animal tranquilizer. Because for all the horror and hysteria, tonight's story is proof that humans are persistent, endlessly inventive, and, let's be honest, a little ridiculous. And even on our worst days, when the world seems overrun by bath salt zombies and clickbait headlines, we somehow manage to survive, to adapt, and to keep laughing at the madness. Rest easy, knowing that the scariest thing in your bedroom tonight is probably just your phone at 3 a.m. And as the world outside calms down, let your mind wander somewhere softer. Sleep well, stay curious, and if you dream of zombies, just remember, in the morning, you can always wake up and choose decaf. Good night.